I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, this is the new Isuzu D-Max, and today you join me up here in the beautiful Blue Mountains outside Sydney to give this thing a proper test, because the D-Max is rightly one of the more popular choices in this segment for private buyers because of the durability and the reliability of the 3-litre 4-cylinder truck engine diesel in the D-Max. The styling is subtly different to the old truck. I think it does look a little better, and this particular grade is the new D-Max X-Terrain model, which is meant to be a closer competitor to vehicles like the Ranger Wildtrak and the HiLux SR5. But you'll have to let me know down below whether you think this is a good looking rig. But really, the D-Max is now about coupling what made the old model great to a significant new range of premium convenience features. That starts with safety, because every new D-Max has been engineered to meet the much harder 2020 5-star NCAP crash rating. All D-Maxes now have a center airbag between the seats to prevent head clashes. They also have a full safety suite that includes intersection AEB to stop you turning across the path of an oncoming vehicle. This is kind of space age tech that's been the vestige of limos like the Audi A8 up until very recently. Naturally, that has driven some small price increases, but to compensate for that, as you can see here, the interior of the new D-Max is way nicer than the previous car that was really dated inside. The new one is much more simplistic, designed around this big 9-inch touchscreen in most of the higher variants. Lower variants have a 7-inch unit that works just the same. The new D-Max has wireless Apple CarPlay, which is another thing that's a big shock and a segment first. That works terrifically well. The standard Isuzu software is a little bit clunky, but you eventually work your way through it. Similarly, in front of the driver, you've got analog dials, but also a color trip computer that shows you a digital speedo, your trip information, safety system updates, etc. Nice leather wrapped steering wheel with white stitching on this model, shortcut buttons on the 2 spokes, and also that leather on the automatic gear shifter down here, but manual models are also available and remain the price leaders. Now, there's obviously some special stuff in this X-Terrain model, including these stitched leather seats, which are actually shockingly comfortable and supportive and way better than the old D-Max pews. We've got electric adjustment over here for the driver, but even on this top spec, no heated seats. Usually not something to complain about in Australia, but this morning was super cold, and it's just one of those things that would really finish off a flagship model in my opinion. Practicality is pretty good. Tray ahead of the shifter, decent sized cup holders, decent bin between the seats, space for water bottles, and a dual glove box there, although as you saw, it isn't damped. Plus bit of extra odd and end storage here on top of the now faux leather stitched dash, which is kind of out of this world if you're used to a real rough and ready D-Max. So up front, massive improvement. As we'll find out shortly, that's matched by the improvement how the D-Max drives. But for now, let's check out that second row, which is now designed to be bigger and easier for use by families. So we do have a grab handle for getting in. The doors open reasonably wide, and we have ISOFIX points on both outboard seats. You can see for myself, the room on offer is pretty good. Headroom is very decent. Legroom behind my own driving position is good. I'm 6 foot, by the way. Tow room is okay. The bench isn't as flat as some. It's still not super supportive, but I think anyone back here will be comfortable for at least a couple of hours, I would have said. And this middle 5th seat is perfectly usable too. Air vents, we've got them. That's great to see. Another USB port here, bringing the total for the car to 2. Probably could have fitted in a few more, but hey, that ain't too bad. And a little hook over here on the passenger seat. That's good for carrying something up to 4 kilos. Now, most of the plastics on the doors, as you'd expect, are hard, but you still do get these nice little stitched inserts. And as a whole, it just feels a lot more premium than it once was. Even stuff like a flip down armrest with cup holders, and that's just finished in this quite plush upholstery, which is a bit of a shock, really. Let's head round the back of the D-Max. Now, As I mentioned, they have restyled the Isuzu D-Max. There's no big Isuzu sticker on the tail of this X-Terrain model. Instead, we have a red X to let people know you bought the most expensive one. And the X-Terrain does come with a host of accessories, including that integrated sports bar and a locking tonneau cover as well. So it's a little nondescript, I would say, from the rear end. And also, if you're considering this, but you want something a little more beautiful, remember that the new BT-50 is now a D-Max, but restyled to look like a Mazda. You can let me know down in the comments which one you think looks better on this platform. But today's about the D-Max. We're gonna jump into the driver's seat and see how it goes with the new remote start functionality to begin with. So we lock, hold down remote start, and there she goes. Meaning that the cabin is nice and cool or warm, whatever the case may be, before you jump in. So, what's the new D-Max like to drive on and off-road? How much of an improvement is it really? Well, it's actually a pretty big improvement, and that tends to happen when you put a ute onto a platform that's all new and you really dedicate time, energy, and money to improving the stuff people said wasn't great about the old one. And with the old D-Max, it had that great 3-litre engine, but the steering was way below average, the ride was so-so, the interior was super dated. So those things have all received attention. We've already looked at the cabin. We're really going to focus on the engine, the ride, and the handling, and then I'll take you through this vehicle's off-road chops. While the basics of the D-Max's 3-litre turbo diesel 4-cylinder engine remain fairly similar to the previous car, there was enough changes to warrant changing the engine's code to the new Ford JJ3 designation from the previous Ford JJ1. There's a new block, new pistons, head and fuel injection system, and new timing gear. Outputs are a little higher, 140 kilowatts of power and 450 newton meters of torque, up from 130 and 430, so nothing massive in terms of the jump, but it is a nice boost. But I would still say the D-Max 3-litre is a workhorse engine rather than any kind of performance ute. It's not one of the most powerful in the industry. Something like an Amarok V6 will still absolutely smoke the new D-Max in terms of straight line performance and refinement. But refinement is an interesting point because they have improved it. I'll put my foot down here. The engine's a lot more hushed than before, and general refinement as a whole is vastly improved on the new D-Max. So if you're upgrading from the old one, you're going to notice that it's quieter, easier on the ear, and better car to daily, basically. The engine, while it hasn't changed too much in terms of characteristics, does have that slightly meatier torque, 5% more torque or so. So it's still good, it eats hills, returns decent economy. On our hill climb today from Sydney up to the Blue Mountains here, managed to get 11 litres per 100, and going down the hill you'll obviously do a lot better than that, so that's quite livable. So the engine, it still gets a tick from me, and of course it's well known for its durability. But the ride and handling are where the dividends really come on the new D-Max. The ride's a lot more settled than before, particularly at the rear end. Not the top of the class in terms of unladen ride. An Amarok or a Ranger is still better than this by probably 20-30%, but it's much better than the D-Max used to be. And once you've been driving it for, a couple hours, you're not really going to notice the ride anymore, so that's a huge benefit. The steering is no longer dead, lifeless, super light and unresponsive. It's now a little heavier. It weights up at speed, so you don't have to spend your whole time on the highway correcting the steering. Instead, you can just hold the wheel with normal force and the D-Max just points dead ahead. So the steering is hugely improved, in my opinion. The handling is a little more secure than before. We're still talking about a reasonably agricultural vehicle with, dual cab-esque handling, but you can put it through the corners okay. The tires are all right. The Bridgestone Dual highway terrains that you get as standard, they stand up to, decent cornering forces, and your view out is also good. Big rear glass, big door mirrors. The shape of the thing is, conventional. But what kind of chops does the D-Max have off-road? Let's talk about that now. First of all, there's a significant change with the D-Max 4-wheel drive version's off-road chops, in that every 4x4 version in the range now comes with an electromechanical locking rear differential, and previously the D-Max relied upon a traction control based system, so having an actual working mechanical piece is always going to give you more security than that. There's also a low range transfer case, which you can shift from 2 high to 4 high on the fly. There's also hill descent control, plus the new D-Max boasts a wading depth of 800 millimeters. Sadly, it was a little dry on our day out bush in the D-Max to find anything approaching this depth, but what we were able to test out are the pretty good approach, departure and breakover angles of the D-Max, which measure 30.5 degrees, 24.2 degrees and 23.8 degrees respectively. Of course, that breakover could be better, but this is a long dual cab and that's what holds it back. But how does it all come together? Well, the D-Max is surprisingly easy to drive off-road. In 2 high, you'll find that you cover almost every fire trail you'll find without really thinking about it, but when those rear wheels do start to lose traction, quickly flicking into 4 high gets the job done, and it's only really for the tough stuff that'll have you requiring low range and that locking rear differential. The stability control tune is good, allowing you a little bit of slip in its default setting, but you can also turn it completely off if you want to get a little bit of attitude into the car. And of course, we have all that new safety technology, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist that actually works really, really well, keeps you bang on center in the lane, which makes long distance driving so much less fatiguing. Trust me, it's something that you'll appreciate even if you don't think you will. AEB, intersection assist, of course that center airbag, and the reversing camera. Look, the resolution isn't that great, but you at least get a nice big picture on this screen here, and you can see what's behind you, which is of course the whole point. So those are my detailed opinions of the new Isuzu D-Max. In this job, what I mainly look for when a vehicle comes in for a generational change is a big improvement, because it shows that a car maker actually listened to the feedback. And in this case, Isuzu have done exactly that, because they've kept the stuff that made the previous D-Max so good, i.e. the engine, which just feels under-stressed and capable, but they gave this ute the stuff that it needed to be more competitive in 2020 in this segment, i.e. a better interior, better ride and handling, and just a more livable personality. So I reckon it's definitely worth considering if you're after a hardy vehicle, if you're going to tow, or even if not, because the D-Max is now not just relegated to being a tow car. It's actually very, very good to daily as well. Now I'm keen to know your thoughts, so let me know down below the video what you think of the new D-Max, whether you'd consider one, what else you'd consider if not. While you're there, I encourage you to hit subscribe and the notification bell. It makes a big difference. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.